Thanks for hanging out with us on this Wednesday with so much going on in Philadelphia sports. It is a great time, that's for sure. We are Sports Take. Rob Ellis, Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks joining us now. He is the radio voice for the Philadelphia Phillies, the man who coined the phrase "Bedlam at the Bank." And I'm trying to figure out where we can purchase the T-shirts. The one and only Scott Franzke. What's happening, Scott?
You should have a patent on that.
I'm telling you.
That was amazing.
Scott, did we take it that far yet? We need to. We will be your business managers.
I know of at least one set of shirts that's been made, Hog Island Press, but I don't know.
You better be getting paid for this,
You better get a
man.
little kickback on that.
I'm telling you.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun.
Scott, is there a moment after it all, the game ends, and you have a second to sort of gather yourself? I know there's the craziness in the clubhouse and everything else, but is there a minute where you say, I can't believe he actually hit that home run? Like, is that, yeah, there was that kind of moment?
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. It might have been before the game even ended. I mean, it's just one of those things that's it's so rare in baseball to have the guy up in that moment and to come through like that and do it in front of your home fans and everything that goes along with that. Yeah, it was a pretty special moment.
Scott, as you reflect back on the entire playoff run from St. Louis, Atlanta to, what jumps out at you in terms of what's the defining moment of what this team has been able to do to this point?
I don't know that there's a defining moment. I think that's part of the beauty of it. I think it's the collection of everything. It's one after the other. And just when you think they've topped themselves, they top themselves again, I think that's, you look at it and there's been different guys every time, whether it was Reese or, Schwarber with big home runs or Bryce the other day, or, you go back to Atlanta, the game one that Nick Castellanos had, he has, 3 runs batted in, makes it, diving catch at the end of the game. I mean, everybody's contributed in some way. Sir Anthony with his 6-out save. I mean, it really is just one after the other. It's been a total team effort, and I think everybody knew that it was going to need to be in order for them to get to this point.
You know what? I know, Thomson is that guy, just signed to, 2 more years on the deal. But, Girardi just couldn't be that bad. You know what I'm saying? Was he that bad?
No, I just think there was a different kind of pressure. I think there was a different kind of feel in the room. And perhaps removing Girardi took some of that pressure or some of that tension out of the equation. I don't know. I mean, I just think that guys, whether it was because they were counted out at that moment, at that point, it's like, oh, well, how are they going to come back from this? 7 down, and they're 11th in the National League in the standings. I mean, there were only 4 teams that had a worse record than they did, at that point in the season in the National League. And yet here they are, they're the last one standing. So I think removing some of that tension, some of that pressure, maybe taking that off of them was helpful. And, Rob kind of spoke to that same thing. He's told me about it for weeks, through September. If we can just get through the pressure of getting in, I think the guys are going to relax and they're going to respond and they're going to perform well. It doesn't mean they're going to win, but he thought they would play pretty good baseball and they would measure up against most of the teams that they faced, and that's proven to be the case.
Scott, one of the things
I was just like, Girardi to the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally valid, Barrett. I mean, because again, players play the game, right? I mean, the players make the results happen. It's not really necessarily the manager. It's not like, maybe a bygone era where the manager is going to make calls and, for hit and run or make a pinch hit, selection or, remove a pitcher, with the DH being in play now, there's less of that going on. So, I mean, this game is still won by the players. And, Bryce Harper won the game the other day with that hit in the 8th inning. He put them on top to stay. But, I just think it's a culmination of people feeling loose, feeling relaxed, and feeling confident.
One of the things I look at, Scott, is the little moment that sets up the big moment, right? I mean, it's not a 2-run shot by Harper if Real Muto doesn't lead off with that hit. A couple of Bryson Stott's just amazing at bats. They all kind of run together, right? So I'm not going to ask you for specific moments, but it's guys who I want to say, of course, you're counting on Real Muto, but guys who are able to get it done to lead to that moment, that sort of bridge to that moment that we've seen all playoffs long. Castellanos makes the catch in the outfield that stops the bleeding, in game 2, which is completely unexpected. Like you wouldn't think that at all, that would be the case or whatever. I mean, you've seen it time and time again with this team.
Yeah. I mean, I go back to the very first comeback, the one against the Cardinals. JT with 1 out gets a base hit, nothing special about it. But there's Bryce in that moment. And you think, oh, here he goes. He's gonna tie the game for you because you're looking for your guy to go deep. He doesn't. He draws a walk. And I think that walk was as big as any plate appearance he's had. Maybe not the one the other day, but as big as many, because I think what it signaled was that, look, I'm going to stay in the zone. I'm going to swing at strikes because I know that's what's best for us as a team, is that when Bryce is swinging at strikes. And he passed the baton to the next guy. And Castellanos drew a walk. And then there's Gene Segura to drive in the go-ahead runs and to actually put them on top. So I think that was a signal to everybody that, we're not going to sit around and just expect Bryce to do it. Bryce will pass the baton, and this will be a team effort if we're going to get there. And that's what that first game signified.
I'll tell you the other thing with him, just to stay with Bryce for a minute, the approach with 2 strikes. Like, we know he likes to swing at the first pitch. We know he's aggressive early. But even, I think, more than any time in his career, he's become amazing and just so comfortable. He must be a Jason Worth in that sense. Behind in counts, and especially with 2 strikes, God, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, and he's one of those guys in the game that has an actual 2-strike approach. He'll cut down on his stride. But I think right now he's just so confident in what he's swinging at. He's swinging at strikes, and he knows that if he's swinging at strikes, if they're not getting him to chase, if he can recognize the pitch. I mean, he said it the other day. I saw his changeup. I could tell. I saw the changeup. I let it go. I knew I was going to get a fastball, and he got one to hit, and he hit it out to the left field because he trusts himself. He trusts himself in that spot to let the ball get deep and to win that battle. So I do think that having that 2-strike approach and cutting down on his stride. I said it at the beginning of the year because he did this all last year too. And I said, if it's good enough for the National League MVP, it should be good enough for just about anybody in a lineup, right? Yeah. Have yourself a 2-strike approach. Cut down on the swing. Cut down on your stride. Whatever it takes. It's really worked wonders for him, for sure.
Scott, how impressed have you been with Rob Thompson's ability to have that feel for the game, especially with the pitching? You look at the way he switched it up in that clinching game. You have Suarez come in on the end to close out the game. You had Eflin come in a lot sooner than people anticipated. Every move he's made has worked up to this point.
Yeah. I mean, the only one that I think people have ever brought up that didn't work was going to Brad Hand in San Diego. That didn't work out. He kind of rolled the dice and he ends up hitting Cronenworth, but that was the matchup he felt like was going to be the best for them, was Hand on Cronenworth. Didn't work out, but just about everything else has. Again, I think he knows that the game is won and lost by the players. They're the ones who are going to come through or not come through or make the big pitch or get the big hit. But he does try to put them in the right spots and put them in the right situation. And you're right. It seems like by and large it's worked out.
Scott, conversely, I don't know how Melvin doesn't at least throw Hader there. Were you blown away? Were you and Larry shocked that he didn't go that route?
Yeah, my only question was, we saw him get up and, they're working on the field. They have to put the more diamond dry down and kind of, deal with the wet field. And so Hader had a ton of time to warm up. When he first got up, I thought, well, if this inning starts right away, he may not be ready in time, but he was clearly ready in time. And we said it right afterwards. We said it beforehand, right after the hit by JT. We were stunned that Melvin didn't come out. And we said to ourselves, if he's warming up now, who's he warming up for? Mm-hmm. Like, what's the point of warming up in the 8th if you're not going to use him for Harper? The only thing I could think of is that we're not going to give Harper anything to hit, and we're going to let Suarez go after Castellanos, but that wasn't the case either. So I was really surprised. You got a weapon like that, you got to use it.
So you still think that that Eflin is right there as far as being a guy that might close sometime? Is he still in the mix, or they keep Dominguez is just going to be the closer from this point on?
Yeah, no, I think you're still going to see him use Dominguez and use Alvarado when he feels like it's most advantageous. So, if it's Yordan Alvarez coming up with guys on base in the 8th inning, that won't be Eflin's inning, but that'll be Alvarado or maybe even Dominguez. But I think you're still going to see, if it's the end of the game and it's the bottom of the order, it's the 9th inning, and Eflin's the guy, then Eflin's the guy. I don't think he would be scared of going to him in that spot at all. But it's going to be matchup based throughout.
Scott, when you look at Minute Maid Park, can you enlighten us in terms of the dimensions of that park compared to so many parks that you encounter? Because I think it's such a unique park the way it's constructed. And I said off the top of the show, if you go pros and cons, obviously a home team, they know all the little nuances of how balls bounce off walls, things like that. Can you give us a little insight on that park compared to all the parks you go to?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a great home run hitters park. There's no doubt about it. And they have a lot of great home run hitters, but so do the Phillies. And I think the most notable is, of course, the left field situation, the Crawford boxes. It's not that tough to hit it out that way, even for a left-handed batter. Certainly guys with the power of, Harper and Schwarber. Schwarber doesn't hit that many that way, but Harper does. And, kind of using that wall and using the Crawford boxes. I think, again, it's a very hitter-friendly kind of park. It's not as deep as it used to be in center field. They eliminated the old Towles Hill where you'd have to run up the hill, and, dead center was, I think, 420 or something close to that. So it's not like that anymore, but it's a very hitter-friendly ballpark. And, they're a good hitting team, but so are the Phillies. So we'll see who can keep the ball in the yard, because I think that'll be a huge key for the series. If you can keep the ball in the yard, that'll be big.
Scott, how about the decision to go with Nola game one? Is that more of, Wheeler's numbers with the extra day rest are unbelievable? He maybe took a ball off the calf in that start on Sunday. Is it Nola was dealing the last time he was there? What do you think, was the deciding factor as far as that went?
I think the biggest factor is the fact that he is better with an extra day of rest. And whether you line it up Nola Wheeler or Wheeler Nola, you're still going to get those guys twice each through the first 6 games of the series. And then you see what happens in, game 7 if you get that far. But I do think that, Wheeler's numbers are pretty stark. It's pretty obvious when he has an extra day of rest how much that means to him. So now you get both of your top guns with extra rest. And yes, Rob Thomson admitted today when he spoke with the media, he said, look, the calf thing is a factor. That was part of it. It gives us an extra day to treat it and to deal with it. But the biggest thing is the fact that Zach's numbers are better when he has extra rest.
I don't like the fact that, we're going into enemy territory. And at this point, this whole city, this team has no fear because, everybody thinks we're on borrowed time. I don't think so. I think this is more so destined that this team is going to win it all, man. That's just me being an athlete, being in the groove and understanding this team is hot as fish grease right now. They are hot. So, I mean, I'm looking at that more so than that we're on borrowed time.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. It's one of those things where everybody bets against you. I know they got a lot of people rooting for them because I think there's a lot of people are tired of the Astros a little bit, maybe nationwide. So they're going to pick up some fans that way. But as far as them and the matchup and head to head, I go back to what JT said early in the playoffs. I don't think anybody's excited to face the Phillies. And like you said, magic things are happening. I think that's pretty obvious that, you see a ball like Castellanos' ball hit the bag at second base. It leads to a run. I mean, the ball's bouncing their way right now. I don't know if it'll continue.
The catch against the Braves.
Well, the one that goes off of Wheeler right back to Real Muto.
Back to JT. Yeah, it doesn't turn into a hit. I mean, there's so much stuff that you can, analyze and talk about. Obviously, when you have a long playoff run, there's plenty of moments that lead up to this. But I do think that there's, if I was game planning against them, I wouldn't necessarily be excited to play them.
I got to ask you, how many times have you watched the home run?
I've seen it.
That can include your call too, Scott.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple times. Yeah.
Couple? Come on, man.
Just a couple.
Come on. We've all watched it at least 10 times. Is that fair?
I haven't gotten to 10. I know that, but I've had it played back for me a few times, doing a few interviews like this. So I've heard it a few times along the way.
Scott, you've been a part of a lot of great moments in that stadium, and can you remember that stadium being any louder than it was over the past weekend?
Not any louder. No,
Yeah.
I don't remember that. I mean, it might have been as loud back in the glory days, but I can't remember it being louder.
Scott, I got to ask you, Ranger, he goes in, and this is another thing that I think really plays in the Phillies' favor. Having started and pitched extremely well, and then showing just the absolute calm to be able to finish things off, and aided by a strange bunt, but that's a whole nother story. You'll take whatever you get. Feel good about him now, game 3, right? I mean, I think earlier in the playoffs, it was kind of, I don't know. I think he's in a good place right now.
Yeah, I do. That first start, I think there's some nerves at play there. The one against Atlanta. I think he was, I'll take my money with him in game 3. I'm fine with him. I like him a lot. I think he always handles pressure. He always handles the moment. So I think they're in good shape with him.
Scott, I don't like to get too far ahead, but a big issue that's going to come up after the season is what do you do with Segura? They have the club option for $17 million. Rob was talking earlier about there's rumors that the Phillies maybe have some interest in Trey Turner. Do you bring him back? Do you move on? Is it based on whether they win or lose the World Series? How do you perceive it?
No, I don't think it'll be based on anything that happens in the next week. I really think it'll just come down to, finances and seeing what else is out there in the landscape. I mean, if they feel like there's a deal in the offing to maybe find a shortstop, and again, they may feel like from a cost standpoint, I mean, you can't pay everybody $20 million.
Right. Yep.
You're going to have to, rely on some young players somewhere. And if they have in mind going out and getting a big time shortstop, whether it's Turner, or, Bogarts or somebody else like that, and they feel comfortable with Stott at second, I think they would go that way. Now, I don't know that you don't bring Segura back. I don't think you bring him back yet at that price tag with the option. But I wouldn't put it past them that they could work something out if they felt like that was the best alignment.
Scott, no real explanation. It's just kind of fluky, but Houston's 3-9 at home during their last 12 World Series games, and Verlander has really struggled in World Series appearances. Is that just kind of one of those baseball anomalies, or is there something more to it?
No, I would have guessed that that's probably just one of those things. I mean, they're a good team. They win at home. They win on the road. They can do both. What was it? I think 19. They it was all road teams winning every game, right? And again, they're good enough to win in this environment here at Citizens Bank Park. The Phillies are good enough to win down there at Minute Maid Park. Just a matter of seeing what happens. So I would just think that that's probably just a fluky deal.
Well, you go, game 4. Is pitching duel. I think they'll probably go with Syndergaard again. And I'm trying to get these guys to be believers in him. They brought him in for a reason, and everybody's just steady pushing me down. But every time they put him in there since being in the playoffs, he has went out there and performed, whether it be 3, 4, however many innings. You know what I'm saying? They brought him in for the experience. And I'm trying to get them that experience means a lot more than people are giving credit for. Noah is here because he's destined. I'm telling you, man.
All right, well, I'll ride that.
That's Scott's nice way of being like, okay, Barrett, got you.
Yeah, right. Whatever you say, Barrett.
No, it's cool. I mean, I hope he is. I mean, he'll get the ball at some point, I would think, in a game like that, unless he gets used, in a game 3. A lot of it will come down to how they feel about the matchups there early in the, that first time through the order, whether they want to have the right-hander attack them. They got a lot of good right-handed bats, but they also have 2 really good left-handed bats, and so I think he'll be part of it for sure. And but I wouldn't put it past them to have a lefty as part of that mix as well.
Makes sense. All right, Scott, when are you heading out? When do you guys roll to Houston?
Our bus leaves in about 40 minutes.
Whoa, okay. All right,
I gotta go. Radio guy, got to go put on a tie.
Man. You gotta get pretty.
Hey, you want to flip the script a little bit? Just put on a tie with the hoodie right there.
Yeah.
Flip the script a little bit on it.
Yeah. Well, Scott, keep up man. As well as the Phillies playing, you're right there, man. You are on your A game. You are crushing it. We appreciate you hopping on with us.
Appreciate you, bro.
Safe trip to Houston.
Thanks a lot, fellas. Let's go, Phils.
All right,
All right,
Scott, take
all right,
care.
man.
That is Scott Franzke. He's awesome, man. He is phenomenal at what he does and a better guy. I will tell you that.
The best
You
part
guys
of
should
that
go high
interview,
end, man.
the best part of that interview was his answer to Barrett about
I
Syndergaard.
know, man. You guys must have got on him before I got on, man. That's what it is. You guys texted.
Yeah, we talked to him beforehand. We said,
Yeah.
Barrett's going to ask you this question and answer it this way.
I've been trying to push Syndergaard.
Listen, you're going to get no pushback from me. I mean, the way Falter pitched on Saturday and the way Syndergaard's handled himself, I'm with you now. I'm not pushing back against it.
Look, I was talking about it in the newsroom. I was in the newsroom and I'm trying to sell it. and Ruben and Ben, all of them looked at me like, and Rick was like this.
Yeah, but it's not like there's nothing crazy about what's your alternative? Bailey Falter? That didn't prove to be a real great option.
Gibson, Gibson,
No.
Hand.
Ooh,
You said
no, let's
you
not
see
go
the hair on
hand.
his back stand up
Don't-
when you said hand.
Don't bring up the H word, okay? Don't bring up the H word. That's the look. I don't want to. Obviously, you're concerned about games. You're concerned about every game with this Houston team. They're really good, but Game 4 is the one where you just say to yourself, "I don't really know what it's going to look like."
Right.
I mean, we know Nola, Wheeler, Suarez, and then 4 is, I think Syndergaard starts, and then and probably followed by Eflin, depending how much he was used in games 1 through 3. I think that's the route he goes, Barry. Because if you could do that, you could probably get 6 innings out of those guys.
Exactly.
Ideally.
Yep.
So.
So then you can go to, I just think that at this point, man, we just have it just going, man, in the right direction. There's no rhyme or reason. There's nothing concrete you can put on it, man, but it's just like almost destiny, man. It's almost destiny.
We keep talking about how good this Houston team is, and rightfully so. But you realize, Houston did not have one game where they had double-digit hits against the Yankees. And they've been averaging 7 hits a game. Against 7, 8, 6, and 9. Those are hit totals against the Yankees. So it's not like they're ripping the cover off the ball. They are very good at timely hits. I will give them that. They are very good at getting timely hits, but it's not like they've been ripping the cover off the ball. And they're two of the biggest stars, Jordan Alvarez and Jose Altuve. They've got like 3 hits between. They had 3 hits between them in the series against you. They've done nothing. I mean, granted, right. You got 7 other guys that have carried this team.
Yeah.
But so it's not like this team's invincible. They're very good. Their pitching staff is outstanding. But it's not like they're ripping the ball. And the way the Phillies are hitting, hey, anything goes right now.
Yeah, like I guess, and I don't think I'm just blinded by like homerism here. I'm not going into this like the Phillies have no chance at all. I mean, because I heard the same thing against St. Louis and Atlanta and the Padres. They were the underdog. I think that all just, I think that bodes well for the Phillies that they were underdogs in every one of their series. Yep. And Houston's got a little thing in their head that, as great as they've been, they've come up small in the World Series.
Yep. There's a whole lot of motivation in this series, man.
Yeah.
Bryce Harper, and like I said yesterday, how much is he thinking about the first year he leaves Washington, they win the World Series? How much is he thinking about that?
Yeah.
And how badly he wants this, and obviously these guys, they want it for themselves, everybody on this team, because this would be historic run if they could pull this off. They back into the playoffs. If it wasn't for the expansion of the playoff format, they wouldn't even have been in the playoffs, number one. Number two, they weren't favored against St. Louis, weren't favored against Atlanta, weren't, San Diego. And here they are. They're not favored against Houston, but they're still standing only 4 wins away from a World Series.
That's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
Man.
Yeah,
it is.
It's unbelievable.
We're in the World Series and I meant when I said that, from Girardi to being in the World Series. Think of how many layers that is to us getting here at this point.
There's no true baseball fan. There's no
Yeah.
true baseball fan who follows the game. I don't care what people on the surface would tell you. There's nobody in their right mind that thought the Phillies would still be one of the 2 teams left standing right now.
After not being in the playoffs for the last 11 years.
Nope. Yeah. Under an interim manager who's been around the game a long time but has never been the captain of the ship. And then the multitude of injuries they went through, and they kept hanging around.
Bryce Harper has not played a position this year.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Barely. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No,
Are you
you're
kidding
right.
me?
And they're in the world. And think about that. If the National League had not adopted the DH rule,
See,
where would Harper be this season?
Yep. Yeah.
Exactly.
Everything the sixth wild card, they don't get in. If there is no DH, they don't get in. Like there's a million things that they don't get in. It does have a destiny feel to it. It really does. I mean, it just has that one of those kind of weird, I can't believe that happened. Sort of like the Eagles when you say, how did they do it? How do they beat New England with a backup quarterback and a backup left tackle and a backup middle linebacker and a backup special teams? Like, how did they do it?
Yep.
And I think we're gonna be saying the same thing about this team. How did they do it, man? It is pretty cool. It's pretty cool to be along for the ride. All right, we'll get it back to the Eagles when we come back at 2:00. We'll do some NFL in the NFL segment at 2:00. Top 5 coaches right now in the NFL, and
piece of cake.
Gonna be kind of interesting. Some
piece
of the
of
days.
cake.
And then we do our AFC power rankings as well, in addition to everything else. But we come back, we'll do some birds. Don't go anywhere. Barrett Brooks, Derek Gunn, Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take. All right, let's talk about Pro Action Restoration. Pro Action Restoration can help you out if your home, your business, a property you own goes through the inconvenience of water, fire, smoke, mold damage, whatever the case may be. They're on call 24 hours, 7 days a week. I've gone through it, and I called Pro Action, and they got out to my parents' house on a Saturday. They cleaned up the mess. The crew was professional. The price was reasonable. It was absolutely an unbelievable experience. They are licensed, bonded, fully insured. They've been serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. Pro Action will work in conjunction with your insurance company. So again, it could be water, it could be fire, it could be smoke damage, mold remediation, you name it, they can handle it. Give them a call, 610-623-3760, 610-623-3760, or online at proactionrestoration.com, proactionrestoration.com.